Hello and welcome to the GA Plus Analysis Show. As we can see, delighted again to be joined by the ever so happy Séamus Hickey.
Speaking to you, Noel.
And what was a kind of a wet and damp preliminary quarter-finals between obviously Kildare and Dublin and Laois and Tipperary. Both games were kind of expected in terms of results. Obviously then you had Dublin winning convincingly enough, 21 points, and we were up in Laois, and we saw Laois getting bet, unfortunately, by 23 on the other side. So what we expected, but it's probably not a fair reflection on the game itself.
But in these games, right? So we listen. There's no point talking about competition structures here, right? But what I liked about Laois is it's a platform, right? So we covered that game. It was an opportunity to see some of the super players that they have, right? I came out of that game a new appreciation of Mossy Keys. I really hadn't seen him operate in the flesh. So I haven't any of the Joe McDonough games that I've seen. It's always been coverage, but he was super impressive. Paddy Purcell again has been exceptional for them for years. But this young goalie Cathal Dunne, that to me, these are the games where fellas like that go up against big teams. I always knew that when I was coming on the scene, particularly in the early days, I wanted to play the big teams with the best players. I was like, how's it going to feel like when I'm standing beside Richie Power or Henry Shefflin? What's it going to look like? For Laois then it's like, code of comfort. What is it like now standing beside Jason Ford and John McGrath and, picking up the likes of this new fellow, Andrew Ormond, is he as good as they all say? It's like, that to me was interesting to see firsthand. No question of a doubt, great fight from Laois on the day. But the golfing class is just, a small bit of physicality, definitely aerial awareness or aerial ability to win the ball. Small bit of difference there. And then, the defending, trying to keep out class forwards that are so good at moving the ball around. So yeah, the preliminary quarterfinals as a concept don't help much, but it's still a shop window. Let's say for really, really good. Kildare had their Joe McDonough final, the likes of Jack Sheridan in centre forward. How do these guys fare up against the likes of Chris Crummy and these teams? So how do you measure yourself for next year? So that's what we can take from that. So we've seen these players in action. How do they look? And that for me is what I took from it. And Laois, hugely courageous 6 days after a losing effort in the McDonough final. No shame. They walked away from O'Moore Park with their heads held high, and that to me, it's important.
You've basically, in that small frame of talking, have basically talked with my 3 clips all in one. So
touching on them, Loli.
Just touched on every one of them, so we might as well turn off now. But I suppose the different areas that I looked at this week, and you mentioned the first thing was they have a really good foundation for a team. And we won't get into it straight away, but I'll just talk about my 3 points, and then we might get stuck into it. And after that, they have really good players. You named a couple of them there, including Cathal Dunne on goal. I thought he was exceptional, really good. After what was maybe a controversial move by Enda Rowland to leave kind of early on in the season, after having such a good career with Laois, an amazing player. I had the fortune to play shinty with him. Good lad. Played against him in colleges. Super keeper, one of the best in the country. We just don't see enough of him, unfortunately. And I know you've been beating the drum about seeing a bit more of the Joe McDonough games to try and highlight or showcase some of these lads because they're exceptional. You mentioned Paddy Purcell there, super player. Another person I thought that was really good was Ben Conroy, full forward. He was left 100%. In 40 yards on his own, trying to mark a Brian O'Mara, and very often he had, a Ronan Marr or a Craig Morgan in front of him to try and deal with it. And I thought he actually done exceptionally well and was very bright on the ball in the sense that he recycled. He didn't just take shots from the corner. And the other person I looked at as well, as you mentioned, was Mossy Keys. So it's Mossy Keys, the centre forward. I thought he was really, really good. I think that in the second half, he potentially got one of the best points of the whole game, where he kind of slipped inside. He kind of dummied Séamus Kennedy and took it on the 45, literally on the sideline underneath the Tipp subs. And then I think the last 20 minutes in particular for Laois, I was very impressed because it's very easy when you're getting bet by 20 points to put their head down in a miserable, cold, wet day after losing the Ireland final. But their last 20 minutes, the desire they showed to get back and to stop Tipperary creating more goal opportunities was really impressive. The other thing that I looked at, and as you said there, is maybe a small bit of naivety at times, where when they played the extra man, they played the extra man so deep that he was taken out of the game completely. So they played Fennell back as the extra defender, despite the fact he was named as wing forward. He went straight back, more or less as an extra full back, not even an extra centre back. He was an extra full back. Versus the other side, when Tipperary played with a Craig Morgan or a Ronan Maher, they sat nearly on the arc of the football arc. And we actually have an interesting video, remind me to show you that in a while, about Bubbles and Richie taking shots from the 21 and putting them wide with a football, because obviously Cork and Ross Common right afterwards. And the last point I had is the change in Tipp personnel. Like, obviously we're very familiar with seeing Brian O'Mara at kind of wing back, centre back, but seeing him at full back was really interesting. Seeing Séamus,
tough assignment.
Tough assignment. Like,
because Brian, like, and again, like, I thought he had a tough day, like on Conway inside, but it's not easy to transition from wing forward to full back. The bloody Mars have made this look so easy that people start to think that it's easy. I'm saying this all the time, right? But like, Ronan Maher can play fullbacks, and he can play absolutely anywhere. Paddy the same. Like, it's not an easy thing to do. And I thought Brian O'Mara was put back in there, obviously, by Liam Cahill to try something. It's
because Conley wasn't named at the bench, so you'd be wondering, is he injured for the game next week as well?
Yeah, well, unless they're minding him, like, so hopefully he is available for their sake.
Yeah. And even like, you had Ronan Maher normally a centre back, but he was moved to left half back, but often went into centre back, and they changed over and back. Another few things, Joe Caesar went to midfield. He actually played really, really well.
Seamus Kennedy slipped back. Yeah,
exactly. And I thought Seamus Kennedy wing back was amazing to watch.
He's just a class player. Yeah,
incredible. Like, and his ability to get up the field. He's a footballer playing hurling. Like, you know, you see him, his vision is incredible. Like, he sees the passes, like, ball into space way before anyone else sees. Anyway, that's enough of me, right? So will we get stuck into it and try and talk about it? So, as we said, and let's not try and rehash what we just discussed there. First thing that I looked at this week was actually a good foundation. So obviously this is Ben. Ben was, what I felt was given a very difficult task in full forward, where he was surrounded by these two lads at times. So again, Ronan Maher, quite often Brian O'Mara inside. But his work rate here, we can see the intent. He's not letting anybody out. Craig Morgan here is under pressure. He's using his arms to get in the way, turns over the ball after a sharp puck out, and a potential goal opportunity. Now, great save here by Shelley after a poor puck. And done really well again. Paddy Purcell kind of stopped out, kind of half blocked, got out the field. But the key thing there was the work rate there by Ben Conroy was what we saw for 70 plus minutes in the game. Again, Jordan Welsh here. I think this is really, really impressive. Like, this is what you want to see at your full forward. In there on his own with players around him. He plants his foot here with the intent of taking the man on. This is what we don't see enough of at times in the new modern game, of actually putting the head down and trying to go after this. Now, Brian O'Mara is bright enough to keep him outside him, but Ben realizes that he's not going to win here. There's no one coming in on the far side to pass the ball into. So he's saying to himself, what I'll do is I'll actually come back the way. He sees Corby, and unfortunately a bad miss. But everything else is right there, other than the shot for score. But like, that was what he was doing all game. Yeah. And even this in itself, like, he catches this ball over Ronan Maher. Like, how many times have we seen people catching a ball over Ronan Maher from behind? Very, very rare. Unfortunately, again, as you said, it's a small bit of hurling, a bit of physical kind of awareness. He gets hooked. But again, like, the principles or the foundations of his play is really, really impressive. And again, here, a simple mismatch between himself and Willie Connors. Plants his feet. We see that Lee Chin doing it several times in the championship this year. Plants the feet, puts himself behind, and that's the key thing. Drops it, but gets it back. And look at this lovely pass out. Bang, Mossy over the bar. Like, that's serious play, but again, it's the work rate. Séamus, you spoke about Cathal Dunne and goal. Like, look at this save. Bang, that's low. Yeah. That's a top class save from a young man that had a hard day because he was coming up against some of the most potent intercounty players. But watch this. He sees stands tall, puts the foot out to stop it because he knows he's not going to get his hurley down there.
Classic example of McCarthy as well, probably having too much time to finish. Some save there by Cathal again. Like, yeah.
And that's the key thing. Like, he gets up so fast off the ground. And he has this intent that he actually wants to save it. So again, like, this is a brilliant save. Like, he's at full stretch there, and still has the ability to get up and save from John McGrath, who's probably 7 or 8 yards out. Like, that's a very difficult save. Here's another one. So we're on to Mossy now, or to Mossy. You said it was great to see him in the flesh because we hear and read so much about him. We just don't get enough access to him. But he realizes there that Dial has gone too far forward. If the ball breaks, it's going to go beyond him. So he pulls on the brakes. Again, this in itself is brilliant. Look, he realizes that Dial is close to him. He slips him, so he gives a little, I'm going to throw up here and dummy him and slip inside. And Dial was brilliant, actually, during like the campaign so far. Slips inside over the bar. Like, with three people on him, with 3 people on him, that's a difficult one to try and execute on the day. Especially here, like when you see how close he is, he's getting hooked and blocked there, getting flicked at, and he still has the ability to use his wrists and get over the bar. Again, ball worked out the back. This is the point now that I think was very impressive. Okay, he's on Séamus Kennedy here, who, you know, very athletic, very physical, very strong, and a super hurler.
Size advantage, big time, yeah.
So he realizes again the size advantage. He goes on his weaker side to try and put him off, cuts back inside, and like, that's the 45 on the sideline. So when we go back and we see it again in closer proximity to where he is, like, the skill in itself and how he executed was very impressive. So how he actually looks up, bang, back, puts Shane McKennedy off, and he's on the sideline there, hitting that ball over the bar.
It's class.
Yeah, and again, same thing here. We'll see it. The ball has worked out. Again, blade through the lines, and again, turned over. Okay, so now what I'm looking at, right, is I'm looking here at the last kind of 20 minutes, give or take, right? And the easy option here is we can see the scoreline. We can see the score, 20 points of the difference. The easy thing here is they brought on Tom Cuddy. I thought
this is unreal.
Yeah, he was exceptional. So we highlight him here in the middle, and he's still trying to get back now. He looks out on his feet, and rightly so, because they're after having a couple of nights out after losing their own final. But he puts in a tackle there. So he's travelled from the far 65 here, all the way through to try and get a tackle on. But the easy option is not to do it. He hits, and then all of a sudden, lovely hook in on John McGrath. Like, super hook in, right? And he actually done this for 20 plus minutes when he came on. Great flick. Paddy Purcell, unfortunately, just slips inside and ball goes again. Okay, we can see him here again in the middle. Okay, again, that's in technical terms not his man. If you want to go old school and say that, even though everyone is his man. Yes. Okay, so again, ball is flicked around. McGarry was a handful, in fairness, when he came on.
McGarry was very sharp.
I thought he was very good when he came on. When he came on again, but we didn't actually notice this at the time. So when I looked back, I was like, there's no way he actually kind of fluffed that ball. But when you actually look at it here, Tom actually gets a hook in on it. He kind of
definitely.
And that's why he hits up the post. And the ball, in fairness, is kind of kicked over the line, and they got a 65 out of it, tipped it in the end. Yeah. But when we actually go back and watch,
did you see Clear there? He literally fired it at him. He just threw it out. But this is it.
Watch, like, he's this here. Look, like, that's super defending. Like, for a fella that's only come onto a game in miserable conditions, 20 points down, and it's hard to motivate yourself to try and get on ball and get into the game. Again, here, look, he's facing forward who has probably 10, 15 yards on him, gets back. But look at this. Clear, as you said there, done really, really well. And Comerford comes across. As we can see, like, there's 2 minutes left in this game. Nobody really wants to put their bodies on the line unless they're really putting their shoulder to the wheel for the hurling, for Laois hurling. And again, wide, so much pressure on them to try and score, because 2 boys in the full back line put their bodies on the line to make sure that there wasn't going to be a goal.
Yeah, but like, the important thing is, I would say, for when you come out of that game, we have to remember that Laois aren't minnows, right? They've been in the Joe McDonagh final 2 of the last 3 years. They've been competitive. They're the only team that has beaten a Lee McCarthy team coming up out of Joe McDonagh when they beat Dublin in 2019. So, like, they have pedigree, like Willie Hyland, like Matthew Whelan. Like, they've some amazing players back through the years, right? So there's no effort to patronize here. But when you're looking to build into next year, they will be disappointed how they finished the Joe McDonagh, the inconsistency of performance, and the fact that they eked out the game against Carlow. Carlow probably, let him off the hook. Carlow, to concede that free late in the game and to concede that goal was what decided the final parent. Like, so it's important to remember that when Laois build to next year, they still have to face Carlow. They've got Antrim coming down now, so Joe McDonagh is going to be super competitive. Getting out of it is hard. But when you're building off of the likes of, so you've got a super goalie, you've got confidence in that. Puck outs as well, very, very good. Accurate to midfield. When you're building from there, then you've got your centre forward nailed, your full forward nailed. Midfield, then you've got your captain midfield, who reminded me an awful lot of Matthew Whelan, number 9.
I thought Paddy Purcell was super. Again, Dooley was brilliant.
But he's an old hand, like he's a super player. Yeah.
And even I thought Jordan Walsh wing back was actually very, very good. I thought he put in a tremendous shift. And he was out
Lee Clear full back, Ryan Maloney wing back, all excellent players. So to me, they've plenty to, like you said, the foundation is there. But they've been thereabouts to Joe McDonagh, but they just need to push on to take the next step. And I think what Dowling has done with Brian Dowling has done with Kildare is really, it's a discipline of play. And like the balls that were going to ground there at midfield that we saw coming out, I know you showed Tom Cuddy chasing back, but that's the breakdowns that you can't afford, because turnover ball, Tipperary murdered them on turnover ball. When they actually were able to keep possession and work the ball through and get to puck and like either put the ball dead, get a puck out or a score, they actually set up well then to actually try and defend the Tipperary puck out. So, it's turnovers that absolutely kill underdogs.
Yeah, and do you know what? Like, in sum, the players are there. Like, the unfortunate thing about the final was, I think in the second half, they only got 13 shots off versus Kildare's 28. So that kind of really summed up the difference, like in what they were trying to do on the day. And even small little tweaks make a massive difference. And that's my second point. The second point is, like, they played with an extra man, which is absolutely understandable. Look, I get it. And we've all been there where you've played against and played with extra men. But I just felt at times, particularly in the first half for Laois, they played with Fennell as the extra man, but they had a gale force wind with them. Like, we spoke last year about the offensive and the defensive spare man. We can see here on the top, like, that's Fennell. Like, he's wing back on Ronan Maher. And again, Mark Dowling goes out to take his man. And look, that happens all the time now, the way things are going. But when we see it, this is the throw-in. Like, his job is to go straight back. But the one thing here is they have a gale force wind. But how deep he sat was slightly questionable, in the sense that he sat nearly as an extra full back, as opposed to an extra kind of centre back, even just slightly behind the centre back or in front of the centre back, because he was completely taken out of play. Because Tipp are so good, and we'll see it here as we run through, Tipp are so good at taking him out of play. So there he is, like, he's kind of in no man's land, not really involved in the game. And see kind of more examples in a second of Tipperary. So he's completely taken out of the game because he's not engaged in anybody, or he's not touching anybody, if that makes sense. So we'll see it again. Sam O'Farrell, who actually played really well. A couple of things I'd say frustrated Liam Cahill with flicking overhead and that type of stuff, where they're dispossessed. But look here, like, again, he's on the full back line there. He's not really in the game at all. So what he needs to do is be more aware of his positional sense. If he was out a bit further, even closer to the arc, as in the football arc, he's able to get across there, potentially dispossessed there. Okay. And if that's been hypercritical of it, I understand. But they had a gale force wind. When you look at the other side, like, it's a very different setup. Okay. The ball is turned over here, an old-fashioned one-handed pull there by Jordan Walsh, which is always great to see. Okay. Yeah. But as we see here, there's Craig Morgan. Like, he's outside, like, of his own D, and he's in between that and the football D, we'll call it. Okay, the two-pointer zone. So consequently, it should be nearly the opposite way around, because Tipperary are playing with a gale force wind, which means the ball is going to travel a lot further. But Tipp didn't want to do that. So we can see here, this is Ronan Maher. He's the spare man, and he's closer to the 45 than he is to the 21. And he floats back the way as if he can get a quick pocket. So we can see it here. The ball is turned over again and shoots. Okay, but look where he ends up. He ends up there because why? Because he's actually looking for a quick pocket. So his positional sense is very different. Is he wants to get on ball, he wants to play ball, versus a Fennell that basically wants to try and stop people running that deep. Okay, so it's a very different setup. Okay, again, we can see Ronan Maher. This is his positional sense when he was the spare man at times, and this is where he stood for the vast majority of the day. Why? Because if the ball is turned over, he can actually get on the ball. He can actually play. Whereas when you're back in the full back line, you can't really do a lot. Okay, and here we go again. This is actually a free. Dial gets turned over here. Really good play again by Mark Dowling. But look at Ronan Maher's position. He's not overly concerned about if they get run him. Why? Because he can still cut off the angle. He's happy enough to leave a score go off, but if they turn over the ball, it's what we saw the last day. Tipp used the width of the pitch a lot, so they went from one side of the field to the other really, really quickly. And I'd say that's what they're going to try and do against Galway, is actually use the width of the pitch. So once the ball is turned over on one side, it's a direct. If you win it on your own, say, 45 and you're left wing back and you're a Séamus Kennedy, your initial reaction is let's go to the far side to Ronan Maher and try and create the space, because that's what it did a lot of. But like what I'm trying to say in sum with this is the difference there is Fennell, particularly in the first half, had the wind. He had a gale force wind with him. He was sitting as a spare full back. He was never going to engage in play. He was never going to dictate play, irrespective of where he was. Whereas on the other side, you had Craig Morgan and quite often Ronan Maher sitting between the hurling D and the football two-pointer D. So if anything happened, they're close enough to get back, but they could also get the run on the Laois team. They could also create that extra pass around the middle, and then they'd be overlap.
Yeah, no, for me, the spare man it's always kind of a balance, right? So with the ball, it's start the attack, run into space, you're unchallenged, draw the man, lay it off, create the overload, right? So that's always with the ball. Like that's why. So Tig de Burka, when he was doing it for Yi, like he was an expert in it. Like he used get the puck out and then distribute midfielders, half forwards, and occasionally go long, fine, grand. But he's hitting from the 45 or between the 21 and 45. That's fine. It's what I am allergic to with puck outs to defenders is if they stand and hit from anywhere like that, that's close to their 21. Like it's pointless. You know, your goalkeeper does that for you. But then without the ball, it's all angles. It's angles, decision making in angles. And like you said, there's no point being 15 yards from your own goal if the play is actually going to be, you know, dangerous around the 45. So it's, you know, I think that every club team used to try it, especially when Davy Fitz kind of brought it in vogue, right around the middle of 2000s, right? Everybody tried this kind of sweeper at club level. It's not just, oh, you bring a man back, you have an extra man, and you play it well. You absolutely have to pick the right person for it, and then you have to be able to. Everybody else has to know their role. So there's nobody loose if you've got one man free. So like it's tricky. Like and I could tell from Laois there at the weekend, like they did that because they felt they had to, not because they knew how to play it.
Yeah, and you could see it as a consequence of not getting involved in it that much, as in they were playing the ball around them. And like Tipp are one of the best teams in the country to like
at distributing ball in the forwards
and to expose the person that's free, because they don't want them getting the ball to turn it over really, really easy. So my last point here is looking at like Tipperary and what they've done and some of their new things. But in particular, I was looking at some of the players. Again, I thought Séamus Kennedy was brilliant at wing back. I thought like that his ability to get up and down the field was really, really impressive. Like genuinely really impressive. So I think that what they were trying to do is not to give too much away. I didn't think they gave too much away.
They gave nothing away, like that. Even the way they picked the team, like that's not related to the team that will play. Like,
but even on the telly, like when you're watching it, you don't necessarily see some of the moves. But I thought that O'Mara full back was an interesting one because Connolly wasn't actually named. Now, again, as you said, the Maras make this look easy, but I actually thought he was actually decent enough. He was solid, and the one thing his ability to flick and get his body position correct was very, very impressive. Because as a halfback, you don't necessarily need to shepherd people to the side a lot of the time, and you don't necessarily get flicks in. But again, this was a great flick over the sideline, and again, you win a sideline when you know you were up against it. This is Séamus Kennedy. He done this all day, right? And this is what I'm most impressed about this fella is he wins the ball, right? He's on his own 65. Watch when he distributes. So he now has the ball in his hand. He travels between 165 and the other, and that's when he strikes it. So he knows where the zone is to strike the ball, but he's always looking up to give it. And we can see it in his distribution. So when he gets this ball in, it's very simple. This is the goal opportunity. Because why? Because the ball is going to cross. He sees forward. Again, himself and John McGrath, a good conversation to see. Leave a run. Again, we already showed this clip of how good he was. But again, this is another very simple one. What a ball. Like, look at this. this is some
That
ball.
example, yeah.
Like,
And that was actually on that sideline. How the three of them managed to get the ball, Willie Connors, Séamus Kennedy, and I think in the half, it was how they got it off the sideline because they were pinned in by 4 Laois players. It was hand pass onto the stick, gone. I was genuinely, I was like, that's incredible hurling in a shoebox, like. And then obviously Darren McCarthy, then the temptation is when you see the run is coming, the run is coming, you have to get the hand pass, and there was no contact, so like the free was given against him. But for me, Séamus Kennedy is kind of around that time. Remember there was a kind of a transition where Pádraig Maher used Pádraig, I'm talking about now, before he retired. There was a transition where he figured it out, where he was standing and striking ball when he used to receive it. And it was basically invariably long and kind of just down on top of Seamie Cannon. As soon as the light bulb went on, where he started distributing ball, where he started picking defenders, and when he started picking like half forwards, then it was like, for us, when we were playing him, we were like, oh, well, balls, because it was very easy read in the full back line when he was winding up. You're like, okay, I know exactly where this is going. It became very, very difficult then to actually counter that. Séamus Kennedy for me is that exactly that kind of transition, that hump where the defenders, the Tipp defenders, he was playing around half back beside Paddy at the time, when they actually figured out that long direct ball wasn't as effective as the one pass midfield, one pass half forward, then the half forwards do crossfield ball into the likes of Jason Ford. That became really hard to defend. And Séamus Kennedy for me is that kind of that evolution, that Liam Sheedy evolution of play, where their distribution of ball went off the charts, and they were one of the hardest teams in the country to defend from a forward play perspective. The way they changed the angle of attack, and Bubbles was the same. So Bubbles used to stay in the middle and leave the space to the right of him for the crossfield ball coming from the half forward midfield, because it was set up by the boys at the back. So yeah, Séamus Kennedy isn't, this isn't new, like, he's a class player, but I love the way you showed it in the clip there, which is really, really good. The head was up, looking until the very last minute, took it forward as far as he could, then the crossfield ball in front of Ford and in front of John McGrath. So like, that's what Galway have to look forward to.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Other things that I wrote down was Ronan Maher to wing back. Obviously, then you had Joe Caesar going to midfield, which I thought was interesting. And obviously Morgan
was very interesting, considering he's played 7 all year. Yeah.
And went to centre back. So Morgan then went to centre back. So you're wondering, will Morgan go on someone like Cathal Dunne, because he might have more legs than a Ronan Maher, and try to follow a bit more out the pitch so he doesn't actually get exposed? Because if you're at 6 and you have someone like Cathal Dunne that can score from his own, nearly 45, nearly off his back foot, he's not going to go that far. But I'm saying, like, is it something that he's considering, that he can put someone like a Morgan in there? Someone like a Morgan in centre back, allow Ronan go to wing back to kind of make sure that they're more stable with himself and Séamus Kennedy, and leave the potential middle to kind of float in and out a bit more. Because, do you know why? Because when you're looking at someone like Cathal Dunne, and if you're going to stand off someone like Cathal Dunne, it reminds me of like the early, we'll say 2010-ish era, where Noel McGrath was centre forward, and he absolutely destroyed us in Croke Park one year, where he scored like 4 or 5 points in play off Brick, because Brick was obviously standing back in your normal number 6 position. And then he was just standing out midfield, popping the ball over the bar. So maybe that was a consideration that Liam was considering when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah, no, I'd be amazed, right, if anything that they did against Laois has any bearing against Galway. What I would think that is, I think Morgan definitely plays midfield. It's his best position. I think Joe Caesar reverts, right? But what Morgan will have to do is watch out for Conor Whelan, because I believe that Conor Whelan plays half forward. Like, there's no maybe. I think there's no way Micheál Dunne, who goes back to pinning him on the edge of the square when they weren't feeding him enough. Get him out midfield, like in the Leinster final against Kilkenny. Conor Whelan was really the ball winner. Like, I didn't see anybody else winning primary possession. So Morgan's going to have to be more aware of Whelan dropping deep, because he will. But it's funny, when I was looking ahead at what Galway weren't great at, was from that Leinster final, their half back line. You've got TJ Brennan, you've got Lee. They don't have it figured out how to hand off men yet. Adrian Mullen killed him from centre forward, and when he left Lee in the centre, and he kind of came off and he went over to the wing, and you had Keenan Fahy as well on the other wing. The handoff wasn't slick. Adrian Mullen appeared on the sideline twice for shots, like on his own 65. Can you see Jake Morris staying number 11?
No.
Or even Andrew Ormond? Like, so they can play either one of those number 11, and they're going to come off. They're going to come off Lee, and how they defend that is going to be important. For me, I think that's, Tipperary will have Craig Morgan to kind of sit back. Willie Connors, I would consider him a bit more attacking.
Sure, he mightn't even start the next year, like they don't.
Yeah, but I think he's the best. I don't get this. Like, I think from the league, it was clear and obvious who their best midfield pairing was, and it was Morgan and Willie Connors. Like, so I don't know why Willie has gone out of favour, but maybe Liam has his selection preferences. But for me, it's gonna Galway are going to have to defend that Tipperary possession around the middle, but Tipp then are going to be concerned then about the other side about Conor Whelan.
Yeah. Dublin Kilkenny.
Dublin Limerick.
Sorry, Dublin Limerick.
Yeah. No, Dublin Limerick's going to be, like, to me, then I looking for, that's a huge challenge for Dublin. I think the way Limerick play is actually, it's tough. It's tough for Dublin because if you look at the main growth area for me for Limerick this year in the Munster round robin was their ability to get goals.
Yeah.
And the sources of them. Before, it was, Seamus Flanagan went for a glut of them every now and again. Gillan used to get one, and Gillan was basically our goal threat for a long time.
Yeah.
And without him, he was looking for a Garrod Hegarty to make a run, but Garrod hasn't been a goal getter for in the last 2 years, nearly 3. So like what I'm looking at for Dublin, look at their defensive trouble against Kilkenny in Nolan Park. Look at their defensive trouble, against Galway, conceding goals. So if you look at Shane O'Brien, played full forward.
He's a handful. Jesus,
goal against Tipperary in the first round. Both of the posts against Waterford down in Walsh Park, only the width of a ball in actually going inside. Aidan O'Connor comes on. Aidan O'Connor comes on, scores a goal in the Munster final. Shane O'Brien scores in the second half. So, Dublin are going to have, like, Paddy Smith, fullback, is going to have a real tough time, no matter which one of them starts. And then you've got Gillan. I think Gillan is the number one beneficiary of the emergence of Shane O'Brien and Aidan O'Connor, because Gillan is playing with a freedom now. Similar to even the same as you'd think of Pat Horgan. Pat Horgan's hurling kind of started to loosen up after 2013, 14, 15, when he wasn't carrying the offense, like he wasn't carrying the attack, and it wasn't, huggy or bust for Cork when they actually got new players in to share that burden, and he started to express himself a bit more. I think Gillan has that kind of effect. So Dublin are going to find that hard to defend. The only thing that I did look at, and I put a clip together on this, is where Dublin might make inroads against Dublin or against Limerick. They've great athleticism around the middle of the field. So I put together a clip where I think that Limerick have been, here we have Conor Burke, and the running from midfield from Conor Donoghue. That's the kind of stuff. Running at Limerick, if you can get the channels, if you can get free of the melee in the middle of the field. Here we've got Fergal Whiteley, great pass off to Reid McBride. That running at the half back line, drawing the man and feeding it off. But this last one, this is something for Limerick to watch, right? So I know Fergal Whiteley might even start the next day, but look, and Ronan Hayes the same. But this pass off to Ronan Hayes, the cut inside and the hard running. Ronan Hayes loves goal, and only for Rowan Murphy, that amazing save, right? That's a goal all day for most teams. So Limerick in the past, Kyle Hayes, centre back, has been exceptional at covering, right? But when Declan was there, I know for sure that teams used to like to run at the channels. Cork had great success with it last year in 2024. But if Dublin can actually, they're going to compress midfield, because Dublin are going to have a lot of bodies in the middle, and it's going to mean that if you can break through the crush in the middle, and that's going to be down to the likes of Conor Burke, Keane O'Sullivan if they play him centre forward. Keane O'Sullivan coming off the likes of Kyle Hayes, and if you can get free of the crush and run and get to the second level against Limerick, you have a chance of the easy points first and foremost. But even the likes of Ronan Hayes, just go hard nosed, just put your head down and go at him, and that to me is probably a great opportunity for Dublin. I think the long balls to Heatherton, Mike Casey will mark him well. Dan Morrissey mark him well. Maybe they put Heatherton on Sean Finn for the size mismatch, but I don't see long ball being effective for them. So we'll see. But it's not going to be a completely one-sided game. But Limerick are going to be smart after that Munster final and looking to, they have have form. Like, so the Waterford performance for the first 15 minutes, they nearly put Waterford away in the first 15 minutes that game down Wash Park, only for Waterford to respond. So Dublin have to be careful. They have to stay with them early, because I know for a fact that Limerick are hurting after that game, after the Munster final.
Yeah, I think that the Limerick game will be, it's probably an easier one to call, and I don't mean that like in a kind of an ignorant or arrogant way at all. Like, I think that they'll have their hands full with Limerick. I think the Tipperary and Galway one will be far more interesting, because like for some of Galway's games, they were really good. And then for others, they were quite poor. Like the first round against Kilkenny in Nolan Park, they were desperate. Even the game against Antrim up in Salt Hill. Now, I know they had a raft of changes, but like you'd expect them to be at a reasonably good level. They had Antrim had a fella sent off and just didn't look that organised. Again,
they conceded in bunches in Parnell Park as well, Noli. Like, so they went to hit Dublin, like, and they conceded 1-3 in 5 minutes, like, you know. So they're good players. They're really good players. If they can actually, like, that Mannion Whelan access with, like, I think midfield for Galway is huge this weekend. I think if David Burke did not have a good game in the Leinster final, but he's class. He was exceptional in Parnell Park. And so if Galway can get on top of the midfield pairing, I think they do have a good chance of getting good supply and good runners off the pop pass, like Concannon, like Mannion did in Parnell Park. But you know, I think it's going to need a big game from the likes of David Burke. I don't know if it's as close as you think it is. I think Tipperary are by far the better team. And like, the Galway started off the year having not made the round robin last year, and you know, really is trying to build up again. I think Micheál Dunne is building. There's nothing achieved yet. I think Tipperary are ahead of them there.
Oh no, they are ahead of them, but I don't think it'll be as. I think the Dublin Galway game, or the Dublin Limerick game, is probably easier to call in terms of, right, you'd expect Limerick to win it and win it reasonably okay.
Yeah, and that's when Dublin didn't throw the.
Well, like, there's always a kind of a shock at this stage of the championship, isn't there? Like,
is there though? I don't know if the quarterfinals actually throw up that many shocks. I don't know. So it's going to be interesting. Like, the Dublin have had a game now. But they only get 7 days to recover to play Limerick. That game was soft enough in Naas. So we'll see what happens. But I'd be amazed if anything happens, anything other than Tipperary Limerick coming out of those quarterfinals.
So I said at the start of the show we'll wrap up really well on this point. So we were there after the Laois Tipperary game, and Bubbles and Richie and myself were walking across, and the Cork lads were setting up for the football game against Roscommon. And of course, Bubbles and Richie think that their prowess is really impressive at football. So the two lads,
in all things.
Yeah, they picked up a football each, and they tried to score a point from about the 21. Needless to say, none of them went over the bar. Well, Bubbles sees himself as a good footballer.
So Tipperary.
Now, if we watch this, Richie takes this very seriously, by the way. Right? He's actually wearing golf shoes here. If we watch the bounce now, like, he's taking this very serious. Look at this. Arms out.
Richie.
He barely hit the end line.
Are they both left-footed, or is the camera reversed?
I don't know, they'll probably tell us or not, but I think they both kicked off their left foot. But
that's class. All right, lefty the boot.
They won't be footballers anything soon.
It's football is easy until you actually have to kick the ball. I won a county senior football medal playing for Monaleen, and I'd say I kicked the ball 3 times in the whole year.
She played hurling with Limerick for what, about 12 or 14 years, and all used to hand pass the ball as well.
Well, so there you go. Did I hit the ball playing any sport? So yeah, football is grand until you have to kick it.
So on that point, it's probably a good time to wrap it up. So again, thanks very much to Séamus for really insightful stuff. Anyone interested in watching Bubbles and Richie again doing their analysis? Actually, do you know what? Nobody give them an analysis show because they can't even kick the ball to the 21. So if you're interested in the football side of this in detail, is on with Aaron and Michael tomorrow. So tune in. They'll give you far more They'll give you a better chance.
Rounded discussion.
So, yeah, their technique and knowledge of the game is far better than that. I just laughing at Richie there. Kicked the ball, it didn't even go to the 20, it didn't even go to the end line. Gee. Anyway, that's from us now. So thanks a million, and we'll see you again next week.